This is what a fish feels on land, Charlotte Emily thought. Charlotte was sitting cross-legged on the floor near the base of the wall-to-wall stage in Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, the original, one and only pizzeria, the one everyone had to go to if they didn't want to be left out. Disconnected from everything around her by the bubble of her own thoughts, Charlotte felt physically removed from the hubbub around her, even though she was right in the middle of it. Closing her eyes, Charlotte listened to the squeals and laughter of kids running wild. She winced at the force of erupting, raucous applause, and she resisted the desire to camp her hands over her ears when a deep, dooming voice shouted, "Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Are you ready to start the show?" More applause, and frenzied cheering. Seriously, why is everyone so excited? Charlotte wondered. It's just a stupid show, with stupid animatronics. Charlotte shifted her position, drawing her legs in even tighter. She slit her eyes open and stared at the trapdoor a few feet from her. Her stupid animatronics thought felt like a betrayal. Not all the animatronics were stupid. There was one, Charlotte's favorite, that was better above all the rest. She was special, and Charlotte thought of her as a friend. The crazed ovation died down slightly, and the announcer was at it again. "Now be sure to stay until the very end," his voice called out, "for a great big surprise." Charlotte tried to ignore the ear-jabbing shrieks of glee. They skewered through another round of applause that turned the building into a quivering tune-forming of vibration. Covering her ears would be doing no good. The commotion was only going to get louder as soon as the announcer continued on. "Ready?" The announcer called out. "Here we go!" Now the announcer's voice was joined by dozens of amped-up kids. It was a chorus of fake cheers. Or at least it seemed so to Charlotte. The announcer and the kids launched down the countdown. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thick velvet curtains swished back and away from the stage. The music began. Driving rock beats, screeching guitar riffs, and the graveling voice of the performing animatronics. Charlotte had heard all this before, too many times. She didn't even had to look up at the stage to know what everyone else was watching. Freddy's Pizzeria performances mostly featured the main three animatronics. Freddy himself, a large brown bear wearing a black top hat. Bonnie, a blue bunny who played guitar, and Chica, a yellow chick carrying a googly-eyed pink cupcake sitting on the plate. This musical trio played all the popular 80s music, especially the current hits. Charlotte wasn't all that impressed by the 1983 music, and she for sure didn't like the animatronics version of the songs. She thought they were repetitive and, well, stupid. In more ways than one, Charlotte wasn't like other kids. For one thing, she didn't like popular things. In things. Her favorite music, for example, was classical. She never admitted that to another kid, of course, nor would she let anyone know how caring she was. Other kids didn't seem to be interested in what happened to people they don't know. If it wasn't about them, it wasn't important. Charlotte cared, especially about vulnerable people, like old people or little children. And all the other kids loved the loud singing and flashing moves in Freddy's shows. The only thing that Charlotte liked about them were when the one and only animatronic worth anything at all rose up in coronation of the big performance numbers. She was the heart of the show. Everything that came before her appearance was just chaotic motion and noise. The stage behind Charlotte's back from as Freddy and his fellow performers danced through their routine. Charlotte didn't think their moves could be called dancing, actually. It was more stomping than dancing. She thought the animatronics looked ridiculous on that stage. Maybe everyone's so fake-looking, instead of resembling big versions of the animals they represent. Freddy, Bonnie, and Chica were like oversized children toys, made of plastic. Their surfaces were too shiny, and their colors were too bright. Charlotte thought they were what you'd get if you took a little kid's bathtub toys and hit them with some kind of bigger-rising ray gun. The animatronics finished their first number, and the crowd was on its feet, whistles and cheers punctuating more emphatically, overly so in Charlotte's opinion. Applause. Sighing, Charlotte surveyed the pizzeria. She shook her head. She didn't get it. The place was packed. The dining room and the adjacent arcade looked to Charlotte like a multicolored, frantic can of sardines. The families, all the parents stuffing their face and either looking exhausted or bored, yammering with one another, paying no attention to their kids. And all the kids, hyperactive and trying to see who could be the loudest and most obnoxious, were the sardines. They may have thought they were individuals. Charlotte mused, but they really were not. They were all the same. They all did what everyone else did, and all of it was stupid. Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria, according to Charlotte's friend, her only actual human friend, was the most popular place in town, the most popular restaurant, and the most popular entertainment value. Anyone who was anyone came here. Whatever. Charlotte thought all these everyones were actually no ones. Charlotte's friend said more Freddy pizzerias were going to be built, but this was the first. Maybe if it wasn't for the family, Charlotte would like Freddy's, because really it had a lot of cool things in it. Aside from the cheesy-looking animatronics, the pizzeria itself wasn't so bad. Bright and huge, the dining room was lined with campy, cartoonish artwork that was kind of fun. even though the subject of the art was always the animatronics. Charlotte liked the black and white checker floor. She liked the red walls and the red vivid booths, and she thought the overhead lights were pretty. They were mirrored and threw every color of the rainbow around the room. The pizzeria had a huge arcade of games and a small carousel that bubbled versions of animatronics instead of horses. That was fun, and it had a great boat ride. A narrow river ran around the perimeter of this building. Cute little two-person boats followed the river current through the restaurant. That was unique. The pizza, though, wasn't so great. Charlotte had no idea why Freddy's was the most popular restaurant in town. She had frozen pizza better than what they serve here. She didn't even think the pizza smelled good. The aroma filled the place were too garlicky, she thought. But maybe it was just the other smells. Freddy's was always so crowded that it tended to smell too much like sweat, especially when the kids were really rowdy, and it had a kind of metallic smell. Charlotte thought that came from the animatronics, not appetizing in the service itself. It wasn't impressive either. Freddy's most hired teens to be servers, dressed in black pants and red shirts. These teens rushed around, sliding pizza onto tables and sloshing soda into glasses. Charlotte watched them now. They were 8 servers working tonight. They were running this way and that way, red streaks of overworked manic motions. Charlotte narrowed her focus, blocking out the chaotic energy around her. She returned her attention to the trap door. She didn't have too much longer to wait. A little girl, giggling, ran past Charlotte and watched the girl, who was maybe 5 to 6. The girl's brown hair was a pigtail, similar to Charlotte's. Or no, maybe not. Charlotte raised a hand and fingered her own fingertails. Her hair, a darker brown than the little girl's, felt thin and brittle to the touch. Charlotte knew that, unlike the little girl's bouncy and shining pigtails, Charlotte's were limbed and dull. Would they have been the way if Charlotte were happy? What would that be like? Charlotte didn't know. She couldn't remember ever being happy in all her 9 years. Not that she remembered all those years. No one remembered being a baby or a toddler, did they? Charlotte didn't. Her memory only went back a few years, and those years, nothing she experienced was worth remembering at all. Hey, a male voice said. Charlotte pulled her gaze from the trapdoor for an instant. She saw that the voice belonged to one of the many Freddy attendants. The employee was in the red shirt and black pants like the servers, who monitored the arcade and provided security for the restaurant. The guy, a skinny teen who couldn't have made anything secure if he tried, was frowning at Charlotte as if he was concerned about her. He wasn't. He probably just didn't want her sitting near the stage. They never did want her there. They used to try to move her, but not anymore. You seriously just gonna sit there until those doors open? The skinny guy gestured to the trapdoor. One of the servers, a teenage girl with long black hair, zipped past. As she did, she nudged the skid. Come on, leave her alone. She does this every time she's here. Weird, the guy said. He let the server pull him away. Charlotte returned her attention to the trapdoor. She didn't care what the guy thought, or what anyone else thought. Well, that might not have been true, but she could pretend that it was. You look like someone who needs a Freddy Fast Coke. Charlotte looked up. Her one and only human friend was standing over there. She was holding a plastic soda bottle with a bright red Freddy's logo plastered on its side. Charlotte didn't like Fast Cola, but she liked Vanessa, so she accepted the bottle and opened it. She took a sip, and she couldn't help it. She grinned. Yo, this stuff tastes like gasoline. Vanessa chuckled. She lowered herself to the floor and joined Charlotte in the staring at the trap door. Charlotte flicked a glance towards Vanessa. She noticed, as always, that Vanessa looked perky and pretty. She smelled nice, too. Vanessa used vanilla-scented shampoo. Charlotte once told Vanessa that she smelled like a fresh-baked sugar cookie. Vanessa had thought that was so funny. She laughed and laughed about it. Vanessa's life, Charlotte knew, hasn't been much better than Charlotte's, in fact. In all honesty, it had been much worse. Much, much worse. But Vanessa didn't wear her pain on the outside the way Charlotte did. She laughed more rapidly than Charlotte did. And Vanessa's hair was never limp and dull. Her blonde hair was every bit as shiny and bouncy as the little girl's. Both she and Vanessa, Charlotte thought objectively, could have been called pretty. Well, she thought Vanessa was pretty. She had super cool eyes and a great smile. Charlotte had once heard a social worker say that Charlotte could be pretty if she didn't scowl so much. Charlotte thought her own features, a little rounder and fuller than Vanessa's, were more cute than pretty, but whatever. Vanessa always looked nice, and Charlotte rarely did. Why is Vanessa so much better at putting on a show than being normal, Charlotte wondered. Maybe because she had to be. It didn't come out for a bit. Vanessa said, Why don't you come back to the table and hang out with us? Vanessa pointed at the long table set on the near stage. It was one of the big tables they used for large families, or for special get-togethers. This table was set for a birthday party. A massive chocolate sheet cake with fancy swirls and pink decor frosting dominated the table. Party favors were scattered among half-eaten pizza. A dozen or so kids were chattering and continuing to eat themselves silly. That was the other thing Vanessa was good at. She could make friends. They don't want me there, Charlotte said. No one does. Charlotte returned her attention to the trap drawer. It didn't do any good to think about how she didn't fit in, how she never had. Vanessa scoot closer to Charlotte. She put her arm around Charlotte, who resisted the urge to put her head on her friend's shoulder. She was so desperately craved closeness, but the head on the shoulder thing would have been awkward. Come on, Vanessa said. Things can't be that bad. Vanessa turned to give Charlotte a bright smile. Charlotte didn't return the smile, but she felt bad when she saw her pain reflect in Vanessa's eyes. Vanessa may have acted like a regular kid, but she wasn't. She was kind, in spite of everything that had happened to her. Vanessa was like Charlotte. She cared about other people. Charlotte could see that. Vanessa was upset that Charlotte was hurting. "You just got a bad roll of dice," Vanessa said. "Things will get better." Charlotte watched Vanessa's gaze wandering to off the distance. Vanessa's pretty green eyes were unfocused. Charlotte could only imagine where Vanessa's mind had gone. If anyone could understand hurt, it would have been Vanessa. Tears welled in Charlotte's eye, her very ordinary blue eyes. She swiped the tears before she could escape down her cheek. "When?" Charlotte asked. "When will they get better?" She looked at Vanessa hopefully, as if Vanessa could give her the exact date, a day that Charlotte could look forward in anticipation. Vanessa said nothing. She couldn't answer the question. Charlotte gave in to her misery. "My real parents, my step-parents, foster parents, all the same. I'm either abandoned, hit, or ignored." Vanessa cringed. She looked at the floor. "I'm not sure how many more bad rolls I can take," Charlotte said. Seeing Vanessa's stiff expression, Charlotte realized she's gone too far with her blankness. She tried to line things up for Vanessa's sake. Charlotte forced a chuckle. "But it's okay." She pointed at the trapdoor. "I got her." Vanessa frowned. She shook her head. Charlotte knew what Vanessa was thinking, so she spoke quickly. "Really, she's the only one I could rely on. She's the only one who's always here for me." Vanessa bit her lower lip. She looked away from Charlotte. Charlotte instantly realized what she's done. Here was Vanessa sitting with her, and Charlotte was saying Vanessa wasn't there for her. Charlotte opened her mouth to apologize. Vanessa spoke first. "Come on, let's join the party." She motioned again towards the long table. Then she stood and extended a hand. Charlotte looked at Vanessa's hand, but made no move to take it. Vanessa sighed and put her hands on her hip. "Look," Vanessa said, "that thing down there, not her, it isn't your spirit parent or whatever you think it is. It's not real." Charlotte's lower lip trembled. She couldn't help it. Vanessa noticed and relent. "And whatever it is, it will still be there if you do go have a piece of cake before it does its thing." Charlotte looked up at Vanessa. She could feel Vanessa's warmth, her genuine concern. How could she reject that? Charlotte took Vanessa's hand. She stood. And next thing she knew, Charlotte was watching another girl. This one with chip-length blonde curls bow down 9 candles of her big chocolate cake. As soon as the tiny flames were extinguished, everyone cheered, as if it was the big accomplishment or something. Charlotte didn't join the cheers. Even if she had, no one would have noticed. She was even in the seat at the main table with most of the other kids. Charlotte, not able to find a spot at the table, was perched to the edge of a nearby booth seat. The booth was occupied by a birthday girl's older siblings, an 11-year-old boy, a 12-year-old Carol, and a 14-year-old boy, all who had nothing but disdain for the party of their younger kids. They hadn't seemed to notice Charlotte, or if they had, they didn't bother looking at her. Pulling her gaze from the beaming birthday girl and all her friends, Charlotte wondered how one girl could have so many friends. She let her gaze wander out towards the arcade. Unlike the spectacle of the show, she liked the zing and ping and neon lights of the arcade games. Who knew why? She only played a couple of games a couple times. Maybe she liked the games because they represent fun, and Charlotte longed for fun. She wished she was someone who could have fun, if only. Charlotte's eyes widened as her gaze grabbed something that was wrong. Charlotte wasn't sure why she knew it was wrong, but she did. She leaned forward and craned her neck to see better. A little boy, maybe 4 to 5, with tousled brown hair and a cute, pungy face, was standing by himself, away from the games and away from the nearby playing children. There was something about the boy that put Charlotte on alert. What was it? The boy appeared to be staring through the narrow gap between the partial open double doors of the restaurant's back hallway. Why? Charlotte shifted so she could see the boy better. When she did, she could tell the boy's lips were moving. She appeared to be talking to someone. Who? Standing, Charlotte began squeezing her way past the long birthday party table. She kept her gaze on the little boy in the open doors as she slowly made her way towards the arcade. It was probably nothing, she told herself. The boy was just talking to another kid, or maybe a parent, or two pinprick of light, close together, glowing eyes, suddenly appeared in the dark gap of the doorway. The eyes were only a couple of feet above the boy's head, and the boy was looking up. Charlotte's heart began to thump quickly on her chest. Warning bells were going off her head. This little kid wasn't talking to another kid, nor a parent. But what could have eyes like that? Charlotte began hurrying forward, driving now by a powerful sense of urgency. As she did, the doors began to open wider, and the outline of the head appeared. Not a normal head, caught in the reddish light casting by a nearby arcade game. 2 long, crooked, pointy ears canted forward through the door opening, and the mouth became visible, a mouth with a twisted, evil-looking grin. The mouth looked weird-like. Charlotte's breath caught. The mouth was inside the costume head. The ears were bunny ears. Why would someone in a costume be talking to a boy? And why were the person's eyes so lit up? Charlotte tried to push past the families being shown by the table by the hairy server. She got trapped between a family and a booth. Not anxious, she strained to see past the family to make sure the boy was. Charlotte saw the flash of greenish yellow and an arm, a furry one. It shot out and grabbed the boy. In an instant, the boy appeared to have been suctioned through the open doorway. Obviously, he was grabbed, not sucked, but that was how it looked. Just as fast, door swung shut, and the boy was gone. Charlotte's arms was extenuous. She looked around frantically. She had to get help. The family was finally being seated, and now the broad-shouldered man was blocking Charlotte's path to the doorway, wearing faded jeans and a blue faded shirt. The tall, balding man was stirring towards the sign that pointed in the restroom. Charlotte sped up to chase him. She tugged and... "Excuse me," Charlotte cried. The man looked down. He scowled at Charlotte's grip on his shirt. "I think there's a boy who needs help," Charlotte said brusquely. Charlotte pointed towards the arcade, but the man ignored her. He jerked his arm away and said, "Please," Charlotte pleaded. "There's something wrong with..." The man with thick eyebrows. They were pulled closer together in a frown noise. He shook a finger. "Go tell your parents," he snapped. Charlotte backed away. Her gaze shot at the... It was still silently shot. He looked around again, trying to find Freddy employee. None of them were in sight, but another man stood at a nearby table. Wavy hair and long face. The man had a plenty and was wearing a too-tight t-shirt with a bright rock band logo. The shirt was tucked in too low jeans, barely hanging on his butt. He was flirting with two women at the table. The women were sipping at fast colas and exchanging amused glances. They weren't, Charlotte noted, paying attention to any kid. Charlotte had seen moms come in 3 kids between them. Those kids were dancing near the stage. Charlotte tapped the man on the back. He immediately whirled. When he looked down and saw Spot, he spoke in a rush. "Could you help me? I saw a man take a little boy in." The man flicked his fingers at Charlotte like she was a gant. So Orange turned to the woman. "Please." Only one of the women frowned at her. The other waved a hand, shooing Charlotte away. Charlotte narrowed her eyes at the stupid moms. She wanted to yell at them for being so selfish, but there was no time. The boy, he needed help. Charlotte just knew that he did. Trying at the end of the row of the table, Charlotte turned and looked out the crowd. On the stage, the animatronic trio was performing a popular 80s ballad. The lyrics were about love, and several adults in the crowd were singing along, like any of them understood what they were singing. They didn't know about what love is. They didn't care about anything but themselves. Charlotte once again scanned the restaurant. On the far side of the dining, the side opposite of the arcade, a male server was delivering pizza to the booth. Maybe he could help. If only he weren't so far away. Charlotte's gaze tilted from adult to adult. None were looking her way. None were looking anywhere except for their food or the stage or one another. No one was going to help her, and obviously no one had seen the boy disappear through the doorway. Or if they did, they couldn't even care less. Charlotte quickly tried to find Vanessa in the crowd. Maybe Vanessa could help. But Charlotte couldn't find Vanessa, and she was running out of time. It had just been a couple of minutes since the boy went through the door. But if something bad had happened, a couple minutes could have a really long time. Charlotte couldn't wait any longer. It was up to her to help the little boy. Charlotte pushed past a group of boys wearing pirate eye patches and wielding plastic swords. They were mimicking one of the animatronics, Foxy, which was a pirate fox, just as dumb as the other animatronics, Charlotte thought as she hurried through the hallway door. In seconds, Charlotte made it to the door. Taking a deep breath, she pushed her hands out and began to push it open. She sucked her breath when a hand clamped around her forearm. She spun around, and there was Vanessa. "No," Vanessa said, squeezing Charlotte's arm in a tight grip. "A little boy," Charlotte began. Her words got locked in her throat when she saw Vanessa's tight expression and tearful eyes. Vanessa looked terrified. Her expression was one of horror, as if she already knew about the boy and what was going to happen to him. "Don't," Vanessa said. Her tone was rough. She didn't sound like herself. Charlotte was scared by her friend's demeanor, but she wasn't deterred. But whatever Vanessa knew, Charlotte didn't have time to find out about it. The boy needed her. Charlotte yanked her arm away from Vanessa and pushed through the doorways. She hoped Vanessa would follow her, but she didn't. When the doors swung closed behind Charlotte, she was standing in the long, dark hallway, alone. Charlotte had spent a lot of time in Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Too much time. She'd never been down here, this hallway, before. She was glad she hadn't. Empty and narrow. Lit in lively space. Single bulbs fixtured that threw off very light. The hallway had multiple closed metals, doors on either side. From around the last door, at the end of the hall, bright yellow light sweeping out. Charlotte took a step forward the light. As soon as she did, the fixture over her head flickered. The splatter light made Charlotte hug herself. Like a hall was suddenly a long, cold freezer. She looked back over her shoulder. She wanted to push the door open to see if Vanessa was still there. Or actually, she wanted to push the door open and run. What she didn't want to do was going further down the dark hall, but that's what she did. Charlotte took a cautious step forward. Thankfully, like all the other things Charlotte liked, she preferred old-fashioned sneakers and the kind of shoes her peers wore. Most made of leather. Charlotte liked sneakers and cotton pants and blouse. Totally out of style, but they suited Charlotte. The blouse she wore today was bright blue, and the pants were pink. She wished she was dressed in darker colors. She wasn't exactly in stealth mode, dressed like the way she was, but at least her soles made no sound to the checked-out floor. Charlotte made her way down the hall as quick as she could without making any sound. Her breath, she noticed, was louder than what she wanted it to be. It came out in a panicked little puff that she couldn't seem to control. Even so, Charlotte made it to the end of the hall without being stopped, and now she was standing in the slit of the yellow light. Inhaling, she had put on a door and eased it open an inch. Tilting her head, she peeked through the silver the gap. Beyond the door was a big kitchen. This must have been the extra kitchen, because it couldn't have been the main one. Filled with stainless steel counters, sinks, and appliances, the kitchen was otherwise deserted. No chefs, no baking pizza, no servers, just an empty kitchen and Charlotte clapped her hand over her mouth in stifled gasp. There, pressed against the kitchen outside wall, a puncturing-faced little boy lay on his side. His breathing was uneven, and his eyes were fluttering as if he was barely conscious. Charlotte held her breath and pushed the door open another inch, and another. Now she could see the kitchen was deserted after all. The person in the greenish-yellow rabbit's costume stood at one of the big sinks. A man, Charlotte thought, because he was taller than most women. A man in the rabbit costume had his back to the door. He was cleaning something. Water ran from the tall, curvy tap. If Charlotte was going to get the boy, now was her chance. Before she could talk herself out of it, she used her body to swing the door open just wide enough to slip through the kitchen. Bending low, Charlotte scuffled into the kitchen. She merely ducked behind the cover of the long metal work table. The barely there sound of her sneakers patting against the floor tiles was drowned out by the sound of running water. The rabbit didn't turn towards her, but Charlotte kept an eye on him as she kept closer to the boy. She got within a foot of the kid, but the man in the suit shut off the water. Charlotte drove beneath the work table. She crouched, holding her breath. From her hiding spot, Charlotte saw the rabbit's feet turn. She couldn't know for sure, but she seemed the rabbit was looking for around. The big rabbit costume feet stepped forward, then to the side, then they turned again. It looked like the man was once again facing a sink. Charlotte closed her eyes and waited for a few seconds. The water was starting running again. Okay, here was her chance. Charlotte walked out under the table. Bending low, she reeled forward until she was in the shadow of the big island. There, she leaned out and looked forward to the sink. The rabbit was gone. Charlotte immediately whipped her head left and right. Where'd the man go? She couldn't see him. Had he left? Chewing on her lower lip, Charlotte tried to figure out her next best move. If the man had left, she probably wouldn't have been gone long. He wasn't going to leave the little boy here alone. Maybe he went to get something, or maybe he was closer and Charlotte couldn't see him. Charlotte mentally shook herself. She didn't have time to debate the situation. She had to take action. Charlotte left her hiding spot. She began creeping towards the little boy who still hadn't moved. Her courage increasing, Charlotte sped up. She could do this. Halfway to the boy, though, Charlotte froze. The hairs at the back of her neck were prickling. She felt like she was being watched. Starting to turn, Charlotte changed her mind. If she was being watched, she needed to get the boy out quickly. So she went for it. Charlotte rushed to the boy and knelt next to him. She shook him, but the boy didn't stir. The little boy didn't smell good. He smelled like pee. His breath was sour. It was probably because he was been scared. Quickly shifting position, Charlotte braced herself so she could pull the boy into a sitting position. If she could do that, she might be able to lift him. Charlotte was stronger than she looked, and the boy was small. Glancing over her shoulder, Charlotte didn't see the man, so she grunted and huffed the child into her arms. Quickly widening her feet because the boy was heavier she thought she'd be. Charlotte steadied her grip in her legs. She turned towards the door. Behind her, the faintest of scraps filled her with a wave of dread. She didn't turn to see what was there, but she could feel it. The man in the rabbit suit was rising up behind her. Charlotte started to run, but footfalls rushed towards her, and she knew the man was right there. Charlotte cried out as she ran, clenching the boy in her chest. She shoved the kitchen door to swing it open, and she stumbled into the hallway. Disoriented and understanding what she was feeling, the pressure and the heat and the lightheadedness, Charlotte looked down the hall, which seemed to be twice as long as it had been when she passed through the first time. She focused on the distant double doors, but they seemed to fade, wavering like they were about to blink out reality, and they seemed to be moved away from her as the hallway was elongating right before her eyes. Staggering forward, Star's vision was suddenly blurry with tears. She couldn't swipe them either, because she needed both arms to carry the boy. Maybe due to her tears or her dizziness, the overhead lights seemed to blink out or even back on again. Everything around her coordinated oddly, like it was being reflected off one of those wonky mirrors they made in the funhouse. The edge of her vision was getting black. She felt like she was looking through a telescope, a smudged one, at a distant point she could never, ever reach. But still, Charlotte labored on. Her feet were made of rocks, and her legs were length of lumbers. Either wanted to work properly. She felt like she wasn't in her own body. She wasn't in some kind of lumbering structure that was made to be in motion. The structure was causing her pain too. She felt like she was on fire, or like something was trying to bore through her. She never felt such pain in her life. What was happening to her? Charlotte agonizing seemed to last forever. She wanted only to curl up and close her eyes, to escape the screeching bleakness that was trying to eat her alive from the inside out. And yet, she kept going, on and on, until finally she was able to fling herself through a double door that led back to the pizzeria's dining room. Falling in the accompaniment noise and chaos of light, Charlotte remained in motion. She wasn't sure she was in control of herself anymore. She felt like she was being moved like a pawn in the chessboard. She couldn't stop, even know what she wanted more than anything. Reeling, curving one way or the other, Charlotte clinged her way through the tight aisles between tables and booths. She bounced off chairs and sprung off people, and then she looked down and saw where her feet were on the trap door she'd been watching earlier. She was home. The boy startled and slipped in Charlotte's arm. She tried to hang on, but he kept slithering down her torso, his legs dangling. Charlotte looked at the crowd. Her gaze shot from adult to adult, from kid to kid. She desperately sought connection, recognition, help. But no one looked her way. She was invisible. Opening her mouth, Charlotte allowed a scream that came across the depths of her miserable existence and was fed by the fires of her rage. She shrieked in a fury of her arms, went limp at the boy's fall from her feet, dropping in his feet in front of her. As his feet hit the floor, the boy woke up fully, seemingly unaware of Charlotte and the fact that she just saved him. The little boy scampered off, scurried towards a nearby booth. Charlotte had just enough presence of mind to let the boy throw himself at the man and woman in the booth. They must have been his parents, because they immediately engulfed him in loving hugs and looked toward Charlotte. Finally, someone saw her. No, not everyone saw her. The world had turned gray and fuzzy, but Charlotte had just enough awareness to see that everyone was looking her way. The stage was silent. Chattering and laughing ceased, and now, like the ripple, the attention of Charlotte expanded until everyone in the restaurant was staring at her. Tears shrieked at Charlotte's cheek as she scanned the faces around. Why would step forward to help her? No one. The only thing anyone did was stare at her in shock. Slawed jocks, bulging eyes, hand cupping over their mouths. The stunned face were the last thing Charlotte saw before blackness consumed her vision. She was a spectacle of stunned her observation. She was a specimen. Nothing. This was the last thought she had before she slumped onto the trap door. One of the onlookers, a teenage girl, was the first to look at Charlotte closely, really closely. She was the one who spotted the stab wound that molated Charlotte's slender back, deep and numerous. The wounds were dragging and cruel, and the blood, so much blood, scoured the girl's black-blue shirt. The teen opened her mouth to scream, but her screams were cut off when the spotlights began sweeping through the dining room, shooting over the stage. If she had screamed, no one would have heard the teen, because in the wake of the spotlights, music blasted from the over 6 speakers. The pounding rock beat, the screeching of heavy metal guitar, the music chorus of the spotlight splashed across the injured girl's unmoving body. At the same time, the floor began to girl's prone form rumble as if something was about to erupt from it, and the trap door finally opened. Separating like a page of a book, the doors set in the floor dropped downward, and the girl's corpse, the teen now realized that the girl was dead, slept into the blackness below. The teenage girl couldn't rip her gaze from where the little girl had disappeared from view. Consequently, she was the first to see the marionette rise through the opening of the floor, but everyone else in the pizzeria saw it soon enough. It was too compelling to miss. Long and pencil-thin, the black leotard puppet came from through the open trapdoor like a spectacle rising from the bowels of the earth. In the black and light striped arms and legs, which writhed like a tentacle of an octopus, the marionette cradled the little girl's limp body. The marionette's fate was commanding in any circumstance. No one could ignore the straight white skin of the black eyes and mouth of the deep red cheek framing puppet streaks that ran from eyes to mouth. But the marionette's fate was even more captivating now, the unblinking eyes seeming to drill into the gaze of every single onlooker. Its mouth stretched into the superior smile. Its eyes were unblinking, and the marionette gazed at every single person in the restaurant with mercilessly contentment. But the accusations of it meant from dark gaze was even stronger when the marionette's attention landed on the adults in the room. The children were spared the force of marionette's wrath. The adults, however, got the piercing force of the marionette's commandment. It looked like they were forever cursed by the puppet's final judgment.